guest speaker. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker. He is a distinguished educational leader whose wealth of experience in education and leadership has impacted many lives. Mr. John Todd is the founding director of education at Charterhouse Lagos, Nigerian school, and the largest private sector investment in education in the country. With a career spanning the UK, Kenya, Singapore, Qatar, China, and Nigeria, he brings deep leadership expertise and a bold visionary approach to international education. John has led the Charterhouse Lagos project since inception, overseeing everything from construction and curriculum to recruitment and operations. The school opened its primary session in 2024 and launches its secondary school and boarding house in 2025, with the sixth form entry from 2026. His work exemplifies a commitment to educational excellence, access, and long-term impact. A fellow of both the RSA and the Chartered College of Teaching, John combines strategic insight with practical leadership. He has become a trusted voice in educational development in Nigeria, building public-private partnerships and creating meaningful opportunities for students and families alike. John is committed to creating a world-class learning environment that nurtures character, intellect, and global citizenship, empowering every child to lead and make a difference. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. John Todd, the Director of Education, speak what truly shapes a student beyond the classroom, the role of environment, structure, and educational leadership.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for that introduction. So I'm now going to try and share my screen for my presentation. Let's see if we can get that to work or not. Yeah. Okay. So, good evening once again, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction, and that very much tells you about me and who I am. Charterhouse Lagos is the first British independent school in Nigeria and very much a vote of confidence in the future of Nigeria. And we had in our introduction there some thoughts about environment and being bound by things that people tell you. And nobody believed we could build a school like this. And drive down the Coastal Express and you will see what can be done if you want to make it happen and you have the money in this case. So I've worked with thousands of young people from different backgrounds, from different circumstances, and that includes now 10 years in Nigeria. And as an opening thought, let me say, the biggest influence on a child's future is not their intelligence. It is not their wealth, and it's not opportunity. I would suggest to you that the biggest influence is the environment that adults create around a child. The biggest influence on a child's future is the environment that adults create around a child. And so this evening I want to explore three key ideas around that. And this very much reflects our convener's thoughts as well. Environment, structure, and leadership. And as a head of a school, I am not going to talk about exams. I'm not going to talk about study. I'm not really going to talk about school or university admissions or careers. I'm going to talk a lot more about environment, structure, and leadership. So what is it that really shapes a child? I think for me, in my experience, children are always learning. And very much that learning happens quite often, most effectively, not in schools. It often happens most effectively when no one is teaching them. And why is that? Children learn by example. Children learn by what they see. Children learn by what they see other people do. And so children are shaped by a number of forces. Family, friends, and as children become older, I think from about the age of 11 or 12, the biggest influence moves from family to friends, to peers. Children are influenced by school and the culture of that school. They're influenced by the community, the place they live, the places they visit, the places they grow up in, and that might include their church or their place of worship. They're influenced by culture. Interesting today, we had an American child in school, and simply the way they greeted us was so different from what we'd expect from a Nigerian child. Culture really matters. And finally, we can't ignore the fact that children are influenced by technology. It really is important. And as teachers, as parents, we often talk about education as if it is something that happens in a school, in a classroom, and that's it. And of course, that is not the reality of a child's life. Children are learning all the time, and we see direct learning, and very often there is indirect learning. And they're trying to work out a number of questions, and things like, what is normal? And that's got so many different nuances. What is normal? Even, am I normal? What is usual? What is acceptable? What is it okay to do in different situations? What does success look like? How do I know when I made it? And that might be in work, in school, in social life, in business. But what does success look like? And for a child, and this is so important, and I see this today, how do the adults around them behave? All of these different environments, and I've listed on there 6 different ones, all of these teach something. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, do those environments, do those people, do those situations actually teach the right thing? Because whatever a child sees, they copy. Their moral formation comes through copying what they see and what they see other people do. I'll suggest to you, and you can argue with this afterwards, that children very rarely rise above the environment that surrounds them. And again, this goes back to something our convener said. The challenge is to rise out of it, but rarely do people, children or adults, rise out of their environment. And you may see that science experiment, but these are they put the top on it, and the take the top off, they still can't jump out of the car. And that's what we very often create, a space, and children and adults are hard to escape from that. Child's environment shapes their confidence, how they react to things. It shapes, I think, really importantly, their aspirations. How far is it I can actually go? It shapes their behavior, their habits. For example, how do you get children to read? Probably the easiest way to get reading habits in children is for them to copy adults. If a child lives in a home where everybody reads, mum and dad sitting down reading, they read because it's the normal thing to do. If a child goes to a school where the only thing that's important is exam results, then that's what they think matters. If they go to a school where, celebrating the other hand, they have different ideas about what matters. If they live in a community where integrity is displayed and corruption is fought against, then that's what their belief comes. So that environment shapes them. Children absorb these expectations. If they see and are told and understand that they can succeed, they start to believe it. But on the other hand, if everything they see points to the fact that from this community, from this environment, you will not make it, they believe that as well. And I've absolutely seen children environment because they've been built, because they've been given the opportunity, the permission, the encouragement to do that. And that's about creating an environment where success becomes the normal thing. And I think very often we do not realize how much the environment matters to a child. Let's think about structure. And I don't want to confuse this with discipline. It worries me very often in Nigeria. There's an Old Testament version of it's about punishment. Control. It's not about trying to make things to understand boundaries. They want to understand what they can do and what they can't do. And some simple examples, if we're parents: bedtimes, routines, what is normal. For example, if it is a routine in your house that your child gets up, makes their bed, that becomes routine, that is normal. They don't see it as a punishment, it is simply a routine. Do they put their plates away at the end of a meal? Routine. Structure, routine, that's normal. Other children will see that as punishment because it's not something they routinely do. What are the boundaries? It can be as simple as, how do children address you? What do you allow a child to do if they don't greet you? Do you call them out on it? So what are the boundaries, and what are your expectations of a child in terms of behavior, in terms of respect, in terms of accountability? And how many times do we hear around schools, it wasn't my fault? And when I say, well, what did you do? A whole story about what somebody else did. The question is, what did you do? Why were you involved? What's your accountability? And I think for me, what I see is young people thrive when they know what is expected and where those boundaries are, when they have a clear structure in which to operate. They want to know what happens when they get things right, as well as what happens when they get things wrong. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against punishment. I'm against pointless punishment. Punishment has to point to what is right, what is acceptable, what is okay. And I think what we find is children sometimes resist structure. And if you're a parent, and I have 3 children, bedtimes can become a place where children resist structure. But you know what? They're reassured by it. What is worse for a child is having no structure, where they're floundering around, trying. That structure is not about punishment or control. It's not about making life difficult. For me, structure is about care. It's about giving children guidelines in which they can operate. And for many children, not having guidelines is a real challenge. They don't know what is right. They don't know what is wrong. And as adults, we have to set guidelines for children. It could be around things like bedtimes. It could be about routines, clearing plates away after dinner, washing up, making the bed. Children need boundaries. Children need expectations. And I would suggest that children actually thrive better when they know what is expected, when they know where those boundaries are. And whilst children do resist structure, they are, I think, reassured by it. And the message structure gives is that we care. We care enough to actually help you navigate the complexity of life. And giving structure makes day-to-day things much, much easier to handle. Now let's think about the adults, and very often there are 3 sets of adults in a child's life. Parents, number 1, teachers, but also leaders. And the leaders these days are not just church or youth leaders. They may be people they see online. And that online element of technology is really important. Children are always watching you. Children are always copying you. And they notice how you speak. They notice how we handle disagreements. And the non-Nigerian, I see things very, very loudly and quite belligerently, even if it's not meant. Children do the same thing. I see that same behavior in school. Children watch whether you keep promises. Children watch whether you show respect, and respect to everyone. And you take responsibility. And that's why I suggest morality. You can lecture them on values until you're blue in the face. But actually, children copy what they see and what they hear rather than the lecture. A lecture on honesty is no use if you then do something that goes completely against it. So going to a school where values are plastered all over the walls doesn't actually live up to those values. And the same with how you live the values that really matter, because the culture around the child that's created by the adult actually matters more than what we talk about in terms of we'd like you to be honest, we'd like you to be respectful. They copy what they see rather than what they're told they should be doing. And this is true in school, in family, in society. And so what children need, whatever place they are in society, wherever they live, are a number of different things. And all of our children have different talents. They're all going to go in different directions. What they're looking for is safety, physical, sexual, social, technological, all sorts of different types of safety. A sense of belonging. Do they know who they are and where they are? Again, going back to our opening. Structure. Somebody encouraging them. And high expectations or aspirations. How high can they rise? How can they move beyond? And so pulling this together, if the environment matters, if we're talking about structure as an act of care and adults who set that temperature, very often today we're asking the wrong question, because I hear so often, what is wrong with young people? To be fair, when I was young, my parents' generation were saying the same thing. And when our children grow up, they'll probably say the same thing. What is wrong with young people? And perhaps what we need to be asking is, what is the environment that we are creating around young people to enable them? What environments are we creating around the children that we care for? As an adult, what behaviors do you model day by day? What values do you put in your behavior? Do the expectations you have of children help them rise, or are they designed to keep children in their place, wherever that place is? And what responsibility does that place on us as adults to create that environment? So let me leave you with this. Every child will rise to something. And the question we need to be asking ourselves is whether the environments we create is towards character and towards purpose. So whilst I say, let the child rise, I also say, let the adults lead. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. John Todd, for that insightful presentation. Let the child rise and let the adults rise too. So we'll now move into a brief question and answer session. If you have a question, kindly indicate in the chat, or if you want to raise up your hand, I will just take about just 2 questions. So you could just raise up your hands while you unmute and ask your questions. And there's a saying that there are no bad questions. There are no bad questions at all. So this is your opportunity to ask questions freely. The only exception may be questions like, will these sessions be repeated immediately? Because our speaker may suddenly remember they have another appointment. So dear participants, this is the opportunity to ask questions. Kindly raise up your hands and ask questions. Thank you. I'm still waiting for the questions. Okay, while we wait for others to think about their questions, Mr. John Ford, I thought about this question. How will they resist structure when the structure has already been laid down since? You know, as Nigerians, children, and some, you should do it, don't go this way, don't go that way. So how will they resist this structure when the structure has already been laid down for them since? Thank you.
I think here there's opportunities for different people. So this is my second time in Nigeria. I left into this is my 4th year back. Nigerian families opening opportunities, and I really do think there is a place for structure. So something like courtesy, it is so important as a cultural mechanism, and it's then where the adults take that, or the idea of respect, because respect can work both ways. Respect can be used to keep a child in their place, but also an adult can lead by allowing a child to express their opinion, support, make a point, giving them indeed the opportunity to raise an ideas or constructively and respectfully discuss something. So I would push this back in a sense to, there's a place for those of us that can to educate the adults within our community to change some ideas around the place of the child and to give the child opportunities to ask questions, to explore, and to explore in a safe and respectful environment.
Thank you so much, Mr. John Todd. Thank you for that.
Say as well, I think there's an inbuilt challenge with the Nigerian education system in that it values knowledge over thinking. And part of the challenge is an education system that has right and wrong answers, as it doesn't engage enough in critical thinking, and therefore children are being taught by teachers who have gone through a system that doesn't value thinking enough. And so part of the structural challenge is to change the education system to value thinking more than straight knowledge.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.